Good morning, you may be seated. Hello and welcome to the first Bahamas Caucus hosted by One Young World in partnership with the Office of the Prime Minister and the University of the Bahamas. And to everyone joining us digitally, we have an amazing day ahead of you, a bus with a full session from 9:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our incredible speakers are going to discuss with you a number of important topics, from the importance of youth leadership to combating the climate crisis via sustainable investment. Later, we'll have fun with a good closing. We'll have an audience of Q&As for our sessions, for the audience here in person, and for everyone tuning in digitally. So please do send all your climate queries to get answers from the leading experts. The Office of the Prime Minister has partnered with the University of the Bahamas and One Young World to host this caucus, the first of its kind to take place in the Bahamas, entitled Climate Action Roadmap to Climate Recovery in the Caribbean. One Young World is a global forum for young leaders that identifies, promotes, and connects the world's most impactful young leaders to create a better world for more responsible, more effective leadership. The caucus is aimed to facilitate an atmosphere of collaboration surrounding climate change mitigation with international stakeholders by bringing together One Young World ambassadors and Bahamian climate leaders to connect, collaborate, and share key strategies that can be implemented in the Bahamas and the Caribbean to diminish the effects of climate change. The government of the Bahamas recognized the importance of strengthening and deepening international partnerships in fighting climate change and seeking support from international bodies for climate justice. We are joined here today by David Jones, the co-founder of One Young World, who would like to share a special message to all of you young leaders. David Jones has distinguished himself as an industry visionary and a proponent of corporate responsibility and social change. He was named Guardian Sustainable Business Leader 2013 following a public vote. He was the youngest global network CEO in the history of advertising, formerly heading Harvest and Harvest Worldwide. Davis was the driving force behind Kofi Annan's Tick Tick campaign for climate justice, one of the most successful cause campaigns in the history, with 18 million people signing up for Climate Allies. Please welcome David Jones to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to everybody here in the University of the Bahamas. Good morning to everybody who is following us online. Good morning, Prime Minister. And welcome to the One Young World Caucus hosted in partnership with the government of the Bahamas. And I think it's a phenomenal initiative, and I applaud you. As you heard, I'm David Jones, co-founder of One Young World with my co-founder Kate Robertson, and I wanted to just have a special call out to Kerber, who is the coordinating ambassador for One Young World in the Caribbean, who sadly has COVID and so isn't here today to see the fruits of all of her hard work. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just talk to you briefly about why we created One Young World, talk a little bit about One Young World's relationship with the Caribbean, the critical importance of climate action, climate change, and the oceans within that, and then finally leave you with a little announcement on the future of One Young World. So Kate and I created One Young World back in 2009, and the reason we did it is we believe that the senior leaders were not doing a great job. You could argue as you look around the world today with inaction on climate, with the issues that are going on in Ukraine, with the fact that we've just seen a record month of deforestation in the Amazon, you could argue that they're still not doing a good job. But what Kate and I believed is that there was a brilliant generation of young leaders emerging. And it was unique because it was the first time in human history that young leaders were actually more capable of driving change than senior leaders. Why was that? Digital technology had given them amazing education and access to knowledge. It had helped them understand the problems and the challenges facing the world, and so it was the most responsible generation of young leaders in history, as well as being the best educated. And finally, and I think most importantly, it was the generation that not only understood, but had created the digital tools, the social media, to drive change. So they knew better than anyone how to use the power of digital technology to drive change in the world. And we thought that if we could just give them a bigger platform, that hopefully it could help drive more change in the world. And I think what's interesting to see since 2009 is if I were to say to you today, name me a leader who's done more than anyone else in the world on education, you probably wouldn't pick a senior leader, you'd say Malala. If I asked you to name a leader who'd done more in the world than anyone on climate change, you probably wouldn't pick a senior leader with the exception.
Recording in progress.
With the exception of our dear departed friend Kofi Annan, you would say Greta Thunberg. And so what we wanted to do is harness the power of that. We have an annual summit at One Young World. We bring together 3,000 to 4,000 people every year from 195 countries. And it's that magic of putting the world together in a room that is the power of One Young World. Since 2009, we now have 13,500 One Young World ambassadors. That's people who've attended the summit. To put that in context, when we talk about young leaders, we had 2 Nobel Peace Prize nominees the year before last, Time 100 members, so they're people doing incredible things in the world. We've impacted the lives of 30 million people globally, and we audit our impact and our social impact, and for every $1 spent in 2020 on One Young World, there was $16 of social impact. We have a particularly special relationship with the community in the Caribbean, and this region is incredibly important to us. We have 3 One Young World ambassadors in the room today, so I salute you and thank you. It's the first time we've ever been hosted by the government of a Caribbean nation, so thank you to the Prime Minister for that. And I also want to call out the Prime Minister for his exceptional speech at COP. It was, for me, the most powerful speech we heard at COP, just very simply and powerfully nailing the fact that we're out of time and it's time to act. So thank you for that, Prime Minister. And we've always ensured at One Young World that every single Caribbean nation is represented. So for every One Young World, we've had one person from every country in the Caribbean. But obviously, we would love to make that more than one. So all thoughts and ideas on how we can scale that impact, very welcome. But we're very much looking forward to building our partnership across the region. We have so much to learn from your climate resilience work. And that brings me to my next and final point, and that is the critical importance of climate action in terms of tackling the climate crisis. So Goal 13, climate action. The core focus of this has to be ocean safeguarding, and especially for the Caribbean region. And I'll just share with you a few stats that, I'm sure you know some of these, but over 12 million tons of plastic end up in our oceans every year, and the number's expected to triple by 2040. There is no marine environment that is not impacted by plastic pollution, including all sea turtle species, all the cetacean species, 40% of them, 44% of marine bird species. Ocean acidity has increased by 30% since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And that change is 100 times faster than any change in acidity that had been experienced by marine organisms for at least the last 20 million years. And alongside global warming, ocean acidification risks pushing marine life beyond catastrophic limits. Coral reefs will be one of the most immediate victims of this change, and although the coral reefs make up just 1% of the surface of the oceans, 25% of marine species are dependent on them. And the breakdown of these ecosystems also affects the protection of coastal zones, fisheries, and tourism. And without a dramatic reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, by 2050, almost all of the world's coral reefs may have been subjected to such conditions and to catastrophic change. So oceans are critically important as a part of solving the climate crisis, and as so is youth leadership. We believe that youth leadership is key to tackling the problem, and we have to ask ourselves and find solutions to the question, how can we safeguard and restore the world's oceans? And it's key that young people and young leaders and governments work together more. And that's why I really applaud this initiative here today. So in closing, thank you for hosting us. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you to all of you for attending. Thank you to all of you who are attending digitally. The piece of news that we have to announce today is that One Young World in 2022 will be in the city of Manchester. The summit will be taking place from the 5th to the 8th of September. Some of you may say, but wasn't it supposed to be in Tokyo? And the answer, yes, it was. But unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything that is going on, we weren't able to maintain the event in Tokyo. And the great city of Manchester, and I say that with a slight bias because I'm from near Manchester, the great city of Manchester has stepped up and will be our host city in September. So hope to see many of you there, and thank you for all the important work you're doing.
Before bringing up the Prime Minister, I do extend his sincere apologies that Prime Minister has a very tight schedule this morning, and that will not allow him to permit him to stay the entire event. On September 16, 2021, Philip Edward Davis led the Progressive Party of the Bahamas to a landslide election victory, overturning a 35-4 seat majority held by the former governing party, to an historic 32-seat win over the 39 in the Bahamian House of Assembly. Having secured this victory under the theme of A New Day for the Bahamas, at a swearing-in speech on September 18, 2021, Prime Minister Davis said, "Deep in my heart, I know that with God, all things are possible. If we work together towards a common purpose and the common interest for the common good, great things are indeed possible for our country and our people. But no government can get great things on its own. I am sure that my government can only succeed if we partner with the Bahamian people. We're going to listen, we're going to consult widely, and we are going to bring people together. That is the best way to make progress as a nation." He currently serves as the 5th Prime Minister in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the eldest of 8 children whose mother was a domestic worker and father a fireman. It is from his father that Davis inherited the nickname Brave, for which he is widely known throughout the Bahamas and around the world. Davis spent his early childhood living with his grandparents on Cat Island, famous also for the birthplace of Sir Sidney Poitier, where he attended the Old Bight all-age school. He moved to New Providence to attend high school at the Easton Junior Senior School and St. John's. Having grown up in a poor family, from the age of 7, Davis worked on a number of odd jobs to make ends meet. After graduating from high school, he became a construction worker until he landed a job at Barclays Bank. This was remarkable in the 1960s, as professional jobs in the Bahamas were well reserved for members of the ruling mercantile elite. Because of this, it was quickly became clear career opportunities in the banks would be extremely limited. He followed the advice of one of his advisors, who encouraged him to pursue the career of law. And initially, the opportunity became article clerk fell through. But later that year, Davis became a well clerked at Wallace, Whitfield, and Barnell. and went on to complete his legal studies in the year 3. Davis was called to the bar in 1975. He went on to serve as Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Leader of the PLP. Although he lost his seat in 1977, he regained it in 2002. Davis is interested in sports, and he's a keen baseball player, swimming, sports, and softball. In 1970, Mr. Davis became a member of the Toastmasters Club, a non-profit organization to develop leadership skills through listening, thinking, and speaking. He served as the president in 1979 and district governor of Toastmasters of the Bahamas. Davis is married to Ann Davis, has 6 children, and inherited the passion of sports from his father, hard work, and patriotism. Earlier last year, Mr. Davis invited one young world to consider the Bahamas to be their forum, in which they accept. Please stand and welcoming the Prime Minister, Mr. Philip Brave Davis.
Thank you very much, please. Please be seated. Mr. Jones, Mrs. Woodside Ori Aki, to all of you here present, good morning. I am so delighted to be able to join you and to welcome you to this caucus. When I addressed the One Young World ambassadors back in October last year, just before COP26 in Glasgow, I focused on the environmental and economic damage being inflicted by the adverse effects of climate change on the world at large and on the Bahamas in particular. And I implored you to join me in spreading the word about the urgent need for global climate action. After COP26, one thing is clear in my mind. The word has been spread. The world knows. Leaders know. One by one, we stood on that COP26 stage and recited a litany of the damage and risk associated with the adverse impact of climate change. In my own contribution, I emphatically made the point about the particular vulnerabilities of low-lying, small island developing states such as ours. And I made sure that it wasn't just what I believe younger generations refer to as a pity party. I urge my colleagues to act and to act now, to help us to help ourselves with the financial support and technology transfers which would enable us to rebuild our country to be resilient against the onslaught of climate change. The leaders know. The world knows. It is the action which must now follow which leaves much to be desired. I hear the frustration of many young people about the lack of action. I hear your fears and anxieties about your future and the kind of world you will inherit. I understand that amidst the existential threat and the advent of COVID-19 pandemic, greater sacrifices are being demanded from you. I urge you not to despair. Even though the world seems to remain stubbornly addicted to a way of life that produces carbon emissions, there are signs that the largest polluting countries and the highest polluting industries are hearing the message. Steps taken so far are not nearly enough, and certainly not fast enough. And we must not be fooled by attempts to greenwash and confuse the debate. But we mustn't give up, and all our lives depend on it. Two particular features of this One World Caucus give me great cause for optimism and hope. The first is your commitment to internationalism. While there are worrying signs that some nations are being tempted into isolationism and nationalism, your organization's continuing commitment to international partnership and international action is a real cause for optimism. It may seem normal to you that you come together in this way, but be aware that even now, as old geopolitical conflicts flare up and new ones emerge, there'll only be justice and peace in this world if we find meaningful ways to come together and to work together. My second cause for optimism lies in your potential for serious, consequential activism. But as you take on great issues of our time, remember that no activist cause worth fighting for was won overnight. Just because the present reality seems so stacked against the cause doesn't mean that success, however defined, is not possible. In the early 20th century, many women in Western democracies thought that they would never be enfranchised to vote. Some even died protesting, but now it is a 21st century norm. In the 1960s, it was the activism of Dr. Martin Luther King and small armies of black and white people in the United States that helped to force changes in the laws of segregation. And it was the mass activism of ordinary people led by Mahatma Gandhi in India and of Nelson Mandela in South Africa that helped defeat systems of colonialism and race and discrimination that at the time seemed hopeless. The ongoing battles of various ethnic minorities for their security, of other groups of people for economic justice, for gender equality, for the ability to live your own truth and be able to be who you are, whoever you are, these are not yet fully won. But the activist efforts behind them continue to yield positive results, however small. I offer these examples to you by way of inspiration. Don't give up. Keep on keeping on. And in not giving up, keep pushing the battle forward. Through your continued activist efforts, many of those who once denied the reality of the negative impacts of climate change have fallen silent. This is partly due to the evidence of two-story waves of devastating Category 5 hurricanes, the terrifying tornadoes, the furnaces of wildfires which have spread across many continents, and the floods and the landslides which threaten so many communities. But it is also because young people like you have made it clear that they want more than irresponsible debate. So don't give up. Keep on keeping on. Here in the Bahamas, we are making our own efforts. Yesterday, I was proud to tell Parliament about this dialogue today. It was in the context of my reporting on the achievements of COP26 by the Bahamas and the actions taken by my government since. In my communication, I devoted an entire section to youth empowerment and capacity building. Let me briefly set out some of the key announcements which I made. I advise my fellow parliamentarians that this engagement today is the first of several initiatives by my administration to connect, collaborate, and strategize with young people on matters relating to climate change. I also formally announced that my government has agreed to host a youth climate conference at the University of the Bahamas right here later this year from July 6th to July 8th. I'm happy to report that they were excited to hear that young people from around the world will be invited to engage with Bahamians between the age of 15 to 30 years to debate and discuss issues relating to climate change, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, and climate justice. Hopefully, many of you already know that we are an archipelago of some 700 islands. Of these, there are 16 main islands which are inhabited, which we call the Family Islands. To demonstrate the scale of our commitment to the conference, we promise to ensure that at least 2 students from each of our Family Islands are able to participate in the Youth Climate Conference. Yesterday, I also informed Parliament that we've appointed 2 climate youth ambassadors to help us to engage and empower young people on the world stage. This was also extremely well received. It was Bradley Watson and Maya Delaney we appointed as climate youth ambassadors. And finally, as we prepare for the Bahamas to be well represented at COP27 in Egypt, I announced that my government is committed to ensuring that at least 8 youth representatives will form part of the delegation from the Bahamas. We hope to stimulate as much interest as possible by young Bahamians and hope that all young people interested in climate change will put themselves forward to be considered in this competitive selection process. These measures are only the beginning. We are already closely considering much bigger, much more tangible measures that will allow the Bahamas to play a bigger role in helping to secure all of our tomorrows. I concluded my parliamentary communication by pointing out to my fellow lawmakers that at no time in our history have the Bahamian people been so actively involved and aware of what is happening on the international stage in respect of climate change. And at no time has the presence of our people been so necessary. We are one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change. To do nothing, to say nothing, not to show up, not to raise our hands and voices, and be counted, for my government, this is simply not an option. This is also my charge to this caucus. Continue to do all you can. Continue to show up. Continue to speak up. Continue to raise your hands and voices. Continue to be counted. This is nothing less than the battle of our lives, a battle that we have to win. I thank you.